my son called. She wants a smaller wedding. We'll keep the wedding. Just her family. Could you just send the check, Mom? We'll handle the rest. After I had already written a $25,000 deposit for the grand venue, believing it would unite both our families. So I freeze all the wedding activities, but when I learned I was being erased from the guest list, I froze every vendor contract. Without me, there would be no wedding. The pen in my hand felt heavier than it should have, as though the weight of that check carried more than just numbers. $25,000. I paused, looking at the blank space where my signature would go. And for a moment, I could see the whole picture so clearly. Charleston in the spring, magnolias in bloom, Spanish moss swaying from the oaks, the Gadsden House graceful white columns, a garden filled with lanterns, and laughter spilling out from polished wooden floors. My Eric standing at the altar, proud and smiling, with his bride beside him. And most of all, my family 30 strong filling the room with their warmth and noise. It was not just a payment. It was a promise. A mother's blessing written in ink. As I signed my name, the old ache of widowhood stirred. For 20 years now, I had lived without Richard. I had raised Eric alone, with only faith and determination as companions. Every success of his, I had claimed like a medal pinned to my chest. And now, to see him settled, to see him married in style, it felt like a reward, not just for him, but for me, for all of us. Chandler's. I placed the check neatly into the envelope, smoothing it with a hand that trembled not from weakness, but from joy. This, I whispered to myself, is what family is for. The phone rang just then, slicing through the quiet hum of the house. Eric's name glowed on the screen. My heart lifted. I expected excitement, gratitude, some boyish eagerness that had never quite left his voice, even at 30. But when I answered, the sound that came through was hesitant, heavy, as if words were stones he could not carry. "Hey, Mom," he began. Are you busy?" "No, darling. Just finished writing that check. The venue deposit is handled. You'll be so proud when you see the place, it's pure Charleston charm." I let a smile carry through my words. A pause, then a sigh. "About that, Mom, there's something I need to tell you." The stillness of the room grew sharp, as though even the walls leaned forward to hear. "Lauren's been thinking," he continued, his tone strained. "She wants a smaller wedding. We'll keep the wedding. Just her family." I sat straighter, not certain I had heard him right. "Just her family?" "Yes." His voice dropped, almost apologetic. "She feels it'll be simpler, less complicated. So, could you just send the check, Mom? We'll handle the rest." The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with the sound of something breaking inside me. "Send the check." My hand tightened around the receiver. My family, my sisters who had rocked Eric in their arms. My cousins who had traveled across states for birthdays and graduations. The church ladies who had prayed for him when he was sick. Discarded like unwanted guests. 30 lives erased, with a single decision. I swallowed hard, fighting the sting behind my eyes. "Eric," I said, steady though my voice trembled beneath. "Are you saying your entire family is not invited to your wedding?" He hesitated. "It's not like that. Lauren just wants it her way. You understand, right? It's her big day. Her big day." The words landed like an insult. Was marriage not supposed to be about two families joining? About roots and branches weaving into one? My southern pride bristled. We Chandlers might not have the Bennett's wealth, but we had something more enduring: heritage, loyalty, dignity. I did not argue. Not then. The silence stretched until Eric mumbled an excuse and ended the call. I placed the phone down gently, as if roughness might shatter me further. Then I looked again at the check, my signature glowing dark against the cream paper. My hand shook, but this time, it was not joy that made it tremble. Something was not right, and though the betrayal cut deep, the part of me that had weathered loss and hardship stirred awake. I pressed the envelope flat against the table, and in that quiet Charleston evening, I knew this was only the beginning. The air in downtown Charleston always feels different, salt from the harbor mixing with the scent of magnolia blossoms. History lingering in every brick. I walked into the wedding planner's office that morning with my shoulders squared, my dress pressed neat, and my pearls resting just so. If Lauren and her people thought they could treat me like an afterthought, they would at least do it while looking me in the eye. Kayla Monroe's office was a vision of modern, chic, soft whites, gleaming brass accents, a polished oak table, scattered with fabric swatches and flower catalogs. It should have felt inviting. Instead, I noticed immediately the coolness in the air, as if I had walked into a room already rehearsed to keep me at a distance. Lauren sat there first, flipping through a glossy binder. Her blonde hair fell into perfect waves, a diamond glittering on her hand, as though it were already an award she had won. Next to her, Brianna the mother leaned back with a poise that only old money could afford. She had the look of someone who measured others, like one does fabric, deciding quickly which piece was worth keeping and which was not. Mrs. Chandler, Lauren greeted without warmth, her eyes flicking up only briefly before returning to the binder. "So glad you could make it. Please," I said, taking my seat with deliberate grace. "Call me Vivian." I smiled, the way Southern women do when every nerve in their body is tightening. Kayla began talking about the venue, about color palettes and menu choices, her voice carrying the easy rhythm of a professional who had mediated many quarrels. But soon enough the conversation shifted, as I knew it would, to the guest list. I said, laying my hands flat on the table, that since the Gadsden House is such a beautiful, large venue, we could make this a true family celebration. My sisters, my cousins, our church community, about 30 or so on my side. That way, both families are represented. Lauren's binder snapped shut with a sharp sound. She looked at me squarely now, a hint of steel in her young face. "Actually, Vivian, we've decided it'll be just my family. My parents are covering the caterer, the music, the decorations. So it's really our call." Brianna tilted her chin slightly, her lips curving into that polished smirk that said more than words could. "Lauren is right. It will be a tasteful, intimate event. Simplicity is elegance. Don't you agree?" I felt my cheeks grow hot, though I did not let the heat rise to my voice. Inside, humiliation churned, but outwardly, I poured sugar. "Elegance, dear, is when everyone feels welcome. That has always been my understanding." Lauren's smile was sharp. "Well, this time it's our understanding that matters." For a moment, silence pressed against the walls. Kayla shuffled her papers nervously, as though she wished herself anywhere else. I looked from daughter to mother, and what I saw was not two women planning a wedding, but two generals plotting a campaign, and I was their enemy to be outflanked. I swallowed the bitterness, because Southern women do not storm or rage. We wait, we calculate, and then we act. That was when Kayla, perhaps trying to change the subject, casually added, "Of course, Mrs. Chandler, since you paid the deposit, the contract is actually in your name. Nothing can be finalized without your approval." The words slipped out like an afterthought, but they landed in my ears like thunder. I kept my expression calm, nodding politely, as though I already knew. But inside, something shifted. The ground that had felt like quicksand beneath me only minutes before now felt solid. I had not lost my place in this story, not yet. The meeting dragged on with more talk of flowers and photographers, but I scarcely heard. My mind was alive, sharp with the knowledge that, while they dismissed me, they had overlooked one small, critical fact. Power often hides in the quiet details. When we rose to leave, Brianna offered her manicured hand with a smile that carried the triumph of the morning. Lauren avoided my gaze, already reaching for her phone. I too smiled, but mine was different. Small, controlled, and dangerous, like the edge of a blade hidden beneath silk. As I stepped out into the bright Charleston sun, the weight of humiliation had already begun to transform into something else entirely. I held the cards now, and sooner than they realized, the game would change. The contract lay open on my kitchen table, its neat black print almost mocking in its simplicity. Line after line of legal jargon. Yet the words that mattered most were plain enough. Contract holder, Vivian Chandler. I traced the letters slowly with my finger, as if to test whether they were real. My name, not Lauren's. Not Brianna's, mine. Every clause, every responsibility, every right of ownership, tied to the person who had signed the check. To me, for a long while, I simply sat in silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock above the mantel. The humiliation of yesterday's meeting was still raw, but here at last was clarity. They had mistaken me for a spectator. They had forgotten whose ink sealed this arrangement. I picked up the phone and dialed Kayla Monroe. Her voice, professional as always, answered on the second ring. Mrs. Chandler, good afternoon. How can I help you? I kept my tone polite. The way honey can disguise the strength of whiskey. Kayla, I need to make a few adjustments to the booking. For now, please freeze all vendor contracts. Caterer, florist, invitations. Nothing more moves forward until I say so. A pause on the line, then the sound of her shuffling papers. Of course. Mrs. Chandler. May I ask the reason? It's just a matter of clarity, I said smoothly. Also, please update the reservation name. From now on, it should read, Chandler Family Event. Yes, make that official. Her hesitation lasted only a moment before she replied, Understood. I'll make the changes immediately. As I ended the call, I felt an odd calm settle over me. It was not triumph yet, but something steadier, the assurance of having my hands back on the reins. Of course, it did not take long for Eric to notice the shift. My son called that evening, his voice tight with the nervous energy of a man standing between two fires. Mom, Lauren just told me the planner said things are on hold. Did you change something? I simply paused the process. I answered, measured, not unkind, until certain matters are sorted. Mom, he groaned. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Lauren has her vision, and she's been working so hard. She may have her vision. I cut in gently. But Eric, this is not only her wedding. It is your wedding. It is our family's wedding. And if my family isn't welcome, then no one's walking down that aisle. The silence on the other end was sharp enough to sting. I knew my words struck him, because I heard the long exhale that followed. Mom, please, can't you just let Lauren handle it? She wants everything perfect. I closed my eyes, picturing him as a boy, hair tousled from play, looking up at me with that same pleading tone whenever he wanted to skip chores. But this was not about toys or curfews. This was about dignity, about blood. No, darling, I said softly, but with steel beneath. Perfect does not mean erasing your family, and I won't sign away our place in your life to keep her illusions tidy. He muttered something about calling me later and ended the line quickly, no doubt rushing back to smooth ruffled feathers. I did not cry after. I had shed enough tears in my life for men who forgot their loyalties. Instead, I walked out onto the porch. As the day slipped into evening, the sky burned gold and crimson above the rooftops, cicadas humming like a chorus of truth. I poured myself a glass of sweet tea, the ice clinking softly, and leaned against the railing. In that quiet southern twilight, I felt something harden inside me. They thought I would bend. They thought I would write checks and smile politely while being erased. But I knew better, because the paper in my kitchen bore my name, and with it, my power. And with that sunset painting fire across the horizon, I promised myself, the game had only just begun. Charleston by night is always a vision. Gas lamps flickering along cobblestone streets, the air scented with salt from the harbor and jasmine from hidden courtyards. That evening, I arrived at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, its entrance glowing with warm light, the hush of money and privilege carried in the air. I had dressed carefully. Navy silk, pearls resting against my collarbone, every line in place. If I was to be dismissed, it would not be for lack of presentation. Eric rose when I entered, his face boyish in relief. Beside him, Lauren offered a tight smile, her eyes cool, as if politeness were a duty. Brianna, elegant in a cream suit, gave a nod that suggested she was granting me an audience. The waiter led us to a private table, where the clink of silver and the soft strains of a violin trio filled the room. Menus were opened. Wine poured. On the surface, it was civil, but beneath, I felt the tension crackling, like a storm waiting for the first flash of lightning. Brianna began the conversation smoothly, her voice carrying the ease of a woman long accustomed to control. Vivian, Charleston is such a charming place. So quaint. So full of character. I suppose your relatives must find it positively dazzling. The way she said relatives made it sound like intruders. I smiled, unruffled. They've always loved Charleston. Our family has been here for generations. We've got roots deep in this soil. Lauren leaned forward, a gleam in her eye. That's sweet. But you know, for the kind of wedding we're planning, it might be a little overwhelming for them. We want to keep it refined, streamlined, refined, streamlined. I heard what she meant, free of anyone who did not fit her polished image. I set my glass down carefully. Family gatherings are never messy when built on love. 30 more people at the table won't ruin the refinement, darling. It will only add joy. Lauren's lips curved, sharp as glass. Eric and I have talked about this. My family's paying for everything else. The catering, the flowers, the band. Honestly, it only seems fair that it's our call. Eric's just lucky, really. Marrying into a family that can give him this. The words cut deeper than any blade. Lucky, as though my son, my flesh and blood, had been rescued by their money. As though everything I had sacrificed was nothing but a stepping stone to their wealth. Brianna laughed lightly, lifting her wine glass. Yes, dear. It is quite the blessing. Your son should be grateful. I felt my chest tighten, but I would not give them the pleasure of seeing me flinch. Instead, I leaned back, folding my hands with measured grace. Gratitude is a fine virtue, but I taught my son that gratitude should always be balanced with respect. Both families deserve that. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Lauren glanced at Eric, her expression expectant, almost daring. My son shifted, his fork clinking nervously against the plate. Mom, he said, voice low, pleading. Please don't make this harder. Lauren's right. They're doing so much for us. Maybe we should just let her handle it. The word struck me harder than I was prepared for. In all my years, through all my sacrifices, I had never imagined hearing my son align himself against me so plainly. For a heartbeat, I could not breathe, but I smiled. Slowly, evenly, like the tide that always returns. Of course, Eric. You must do what you think best. My voice carried no tremor, though inside, something cracked. The dinner went on. Courses arriving. Laughter shared, though none of it from me. I tasted nothing, heard little, only the echo of his betrayal, filling my ears. When the dessert menus arrived, I rose. Forgive me, I said gently. It has been a long day. I'll leave you all to enjoy the evening. End of, when the dessert menus arrived, I rose. I felt their eyes on my back as I walked away, but I did not falter. My dignity was intact, though my heart ached. Out on the street, beneath Charleston's lamplight, I paused. The night air was cool, the scent of jasmine strong, and in that quiet, I felt my resolve harden. They thought they had silenced me, but they had only awakened me. After that dinner, I did not hear from Eric for a few days. The silence itself was its own message, and I understood it. He was wrestling, torn in two directions, and rather than face me, he withdrew. A son caught between love and loyalty will always choose the quieter path, hoping the storm will pass. But storms do not pass on their own, they grow until they break. I heard from one of his friends that he had gone to a bar downtown, one of those places where young professionals gather after work, polished wood, craft beers, dim lights meant to soften the edges of hard truths. I was not there, but I could imagine it easily. The way he slouched at the counter, shoulders heavy, voice low, as he vented to his friend about how impossible it all felt. And then, as fate would have it, the truth chose that very moment to walk through the door. Lauren, surrounded by her bridesmaids, swept into the same bar, laughter trailing behind her like perfume. She did not notice Eric sitting just a few feet away, hidden in the shadows of his own doubts. Her words carried across the room, careless and bright. It'll be perfect, she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Eric's family won't be there. No embarrassing country bumpkins spoiling the photos. Just us. Just class. The laughter of her friends followed, sharp and cruel, the kind of sound that leaves bruises. I imagined Eric in that moment, his face paling, the glass in his hand stilled midair. For the first time, he must have seen her clearly, not as the woman he thought he loved, but as the architect of his family's erasure. The manipulation, the pressure, the way she had turned him against his own blood. It all clicked at once, and the silence that followed inside him was louder than her laughter could ever be. That same evening, while he wrestled with betrayal, I was making my own preparations. I called my sisters, one by one, speaking lightly, not revealing too much, but enough to let them know. Keep the date free, I told them. There may be a wedding yet, and when there is, I want my family ready. Their voices rose with surprise, some with indignation, but mostly with love. Of course, Vivian, one cousin said softly. We'll be there. You just say the word. On, there, on, there, on, there, on, there, on, there, on, were, on, there, were. Hearing their loyalty steadied me. They had always stood by me. Through Richard's passing. Through the lean years when every penny counted. Through Eric's milestones. And now, even in this insult, they would stand with me still. My resolve was no longer only mine. It carried the weight of generations who had never bowed their heads to money or arrogance. I sat at my kitchen table after those calls, pen in hand, making notes, preparing quietly. Not with noise, not with anger, but with precision. They thought I would come undone. Instead, I was stitching myself tighter. Meanwhile, Eric must have left that bar with a heart heavier than when he entered. I can picture him outside, the Charleston night cool around him, the sound of the city muffled by the roar inside his head. He must have pulled out his phone then, staring at my number, thumb hovering, torn between two truths. The woman he thought he loved, and the mother who had loved him every day of his life. I did not know it then, but at that exact moment, his silence cracked. A seed of doubt had been planted, watered by Lauren's own arrogance. And while he stood frozen under the glow of the streetlights, I sat miles away on my porch, sipping sweet tea, knowing deep inside that cracks, once they appear, only spread wider. The game was shifting, and neither he nor she yet understood that the tide was turning. The morning of the meeting, I dressed with deliberate care, cream linen suit, pearl earrings, hair swept into a chignon, not a strand out of place. When one goes to war in Charleston, one does not carry swords. One carries dignity, manners, and an iron will hidden beneath lace. We met again at Kayla's office, sunlight pouring through tall windows onto the polished oak table. Lauren was already seated, tapping her manicured nails against her phone, her impatience filling the room. Brianna sat beside her, spine stiff, eyes sharp as glass. Eric stood awkwardly near the window, shoulders hunched, as if hoping to disappear. Vivian, Brianna began, her voice cool as steel polish smooth. I hope you've reconsidered. We really must move forward with the planning. Time is short. I smiled gently, setting my handbag down before I took my seat. I've considered, Brianna, and I've come to a very simple conclusion. I folded my hands on the table, steady, unshaking. Without me there is no venue. No vendors. No wedding. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that stills even the air. Kayla glanced quickly at me, then at Lauren, her pen frozen mid-note. Lauren's face flushed red, her composure cracking. You can't just. You wouldn't dare. We've planned everything around this. Do you know how many people are expecting invitations? Indeed, I replied softly. And so are my 30 plus relatives. Funny, isn't it, how they were all so easily forgotten? Lauren slammed her binder shut, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet room. If you're going to sabotage this, maybe there won't be a wedding at all. Brianna leaned forward, fury simmering beneath her carefully drawn lips. This is ridiculous. My daughter has invested too much to have it ruined by petty demands. We are offering refinement, class, respectability. Respect, I cut in smoothly, is not something purchased, Brianna. It is given freely or not at all. I kept my voice even, never raised, but every word carried weight. Years of Southern gentility had taught me that sharpness need not be loud. Eric finally spoke then, his voice uncertain at first, but growing firmer with each word. Mom's right. Lauren turned on him, her eyes wide with shock. Eric! He shook his head, stepping forward. This is supposed to be about 2 families, not 1. I've let things slide. I've kept quiet. But enough. Mom isn't wrong. If her family isn't included, then this wedding isn't what it's meant to be. For a moment, I saw my son again. Not the boy swayed by flattery, but the man I had raised to value fairness. My heart tightened. Pride, mingling with pain. Lauren's chest rose and fell sharply, her fury barely contained. She looked at her mother, searching for support. But even Brianna's poise seemed unsettled. They both knew the truth without me. The grand Gadsden house would close its doors, and their dream of a society wedding would collapse into nothing but whispers and embarrassment. Finally, Lauren exhaled hard, her jaw clenched. Fine. 50-50. But only because we don't have time to start over. I inclined my head as though we had reached a civil agreement, though I knew she had surrendered out of necessity, not grace. That will do. But one more thing. Lauren's eyes narrowed. What now? At the reception, I said calmly, there will be a toast, acknowledging both families openly, equally. That condition is not negotiable. She glared, lips pressed tight. But she did not refuse. She couldn't. I rose then, smoothing my skirt, collecting my handbag. Thank you for your time, I said pleasantly, as though we had simply discussed flower arrangements. I look forward to celebrating together. Oh. As I stepped out into the Charleston sun, the heat wrapped around me like armor. The battle was not over, but I had drawn the line. My son had stood beside me at last, and the balance had shifted. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, the sweet magnolia air filling my lungs. The game was mine to finish. And I intended to finish it well. The Gadsden house never looked finer. Its tall windows glowed with golden light. Lanterns strung across the courtyard. Spanish moss swaying in the evening breeze. Inside, candles flickered on polished tables, dressed with crystal and china. The room was filled with chatter, though beneath the surface, the air carried a subtle stiffness. Two families, one polished and proud, the other warm and rooted, sat together under the same roof at last, though not entirely at ease. I walked through the crowd slowly, greeting my relatives, each face filling me with strength. They had come, as I knew they would, 30 voices strong, carrying laughter and affection into a room that had not wanted them. The Chandlers were here. And that meant I had already won half the battle. Lauren shone like a diamond at the head table, her gown glittering, her smile fixed. Brianna sat beside her, posture perfect, her glass raised in polite conversation with the mayor's wife. But there was something brittle about them tonight, as though they could feel the weight of eyes that knew more than what was spoken aloud. The time came for toasts. Glasses clinked, the room quieted, and I felt every gaze shift to me as I rose. My silk gown rustled softly as I stood, pearls at my neck, catching the candlelight. For a moment, I let the silence linger, drawing breath, steadying my heart. My dear friends, my beloved family, I began, voice warm yet carrying across the hall. What a joy it is to see us gathered here. Not as two halves, but as one whole. Tonight is not only about Eric and Lauren. It is about the Chandlers and the Bennetts. About roots entwining. About two families choosing to stand together. I let my eyes sweep the room slowly. Now, it is true there was a time when it seemed as though some might be left behind. But love has a way of correcting its path. Love remembers. Love insists on inclusion. And so here we are, every seat filled, every heart accounted for. A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. My relatives lifted their glasses high, pride shining openly. The Bennetts, stiff and strained, kept their faces still, though I saw Brianna's lips tighten and Lauren's smile falter at the edges. They knew, as did everyone listening, that my words carried more than simple sentiment. They were truth, polished into courtesy, delivered with grace sharp enough to cut. I raised my glass higher. To family, all of it. May this union remind us that wealth fades, beauty changes, but loyalty endures. To Eric and Lauren. The room answered in a chorus of clinking crystal. Some smiled broadly, others nodded with the kind of respect that cannot be bought. I sat slowly, my pulse steady, my hand firm, as I placed the glass back on the table. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace settling over me like a shawl. Then Eric stood. His face was pale at first, his eyes moving between me and his bride. But when he spoke, his voice was clear. I want to thank my mother, he said, and the room stilled again. She gave me more than life. She gave me values. Tonight is possible because of her, and I want everyone here to know I'm proud. Proud to be her son. Proud to have both families here. Proud to begin this marriage with honesty and balance. He raised his glass to me. In that moment, I saw my boy again, the man he was becoming, and my heart swelled with both sorrow and triumph. Lauren's smile flickered, thin as glass. Brianna looked away, her face set. But the Chandlers beamed, their pride, a light that filled the room. As I sat back, my sisters leaning close, my cousins laughing softly, I allowed myself a small smile. Not gloating, not cruel, simply satisfied. My dignity was restored, my family's place secure. Balance had been reclaimed, and with that, the night was finally mine. When I look back at what happened, I realize life has a way of testing how much dignity we are willing to defend. Money, appearances, even grand weddings mean nothing if respect and loyalty are not at the foundation. I learned that silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it is the gathering of strength before speaking the truth. Family bonds should never be negotiated away for convenience, and when they are threatened, we must stand firm, no matter the cost. If you believe every story carries a lesson, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.